is our 12th webinar. This week, this installment is, of course, has a cloud hanging over it, and that cloud, of course, is the after effects of last week's devastating blast that destroyed much of East Beirut and has left I don't think it's unfair to say, left a nation in a state of trauma. And while we are discussing the wine industry today, we must be very much aware that this is a country that is still literally and metaphorically picking itself up from a truly traumatic experience. But the Lebanese are a resilient people. It's a word that's been used a lot in recent days, but it's true. And I have no doubt that the country will come back stronger. Today we have Ramzi and Sami Ghosn, who own the Massaya winery, one of the wineries, because it's now two operations, one of which is in the Bekaa Valley in Ta'nail, and the other one in Fa'ra in Mount Lebanon. Ramzi and Sami are pioneers in many, many senses of the word. They started off by making arak, by reigniting, if you want, a nation's pride in its national drink with their by now famous blue bottled arak. And then when they also decided to make wine, they set a benchmark for how Lebanese wine should develop and evolve in the post-war period, not just in the wines themselves, but in how wineries sell themselves to modern consumers. They were the first people to initiate wine tourism. They understood that wine was about an experience, not just what was in the bottle. And also, they were the first people to truly understand, I believe, and I'm going out on a limb here, to truly understand that wine also has to have a sense of place, that wine has to reflect the terroir. And they didn't immediately jump on the bandwagon that a lot of other wineries did by focusing on the superstar grapes, the Cabs, the Merlots, the Chardonnays, and brand new oak. They understood that there were grapes that had been in the Bekaa for over 150 years, the Cinsault in particular, and Grenache. And in the white wines, they understood that we had great indigenous grapes, Abeidi and Meroueh, and they were using these grapes and embracing these grapes years before the rest of the industry woke up to the idea that these grapes also represent who we are. So pioneers in many, many ways. They're both friends of mine. I've known them for nearly 20 years. And they are also very much imbued with a sense of what it means to be Lebanese and to understand that sometimes when you are born Lebanese, you live with conflict on your shoulder. And both Sami and Ramzi understood this from an early age, being children of the Civil War, and also in the 2006 war, a very brief but bloody and intense war with Israel that we had in the summer of that year. So thank you very much for joining us today, guys. And I just want to ask you, bearing in mind that before last week's blast, Lebanon was, it's fair to say, on its knees financially, and a situation not helped by the global pandemic. If it was difficult 10 days ago to operate and do business in Lebanon? How difficult is it today in the aftermath of last week's terrible event?
Hi, Michael, and hi, everyone. I don't know if Sami is listening, is with us or not.
I think he is,
anyway,
yes.
Excellent. What happened a few days ago is terrible for Lebanon. You know, you never get used to tragedies and horror because what we went through many things in our past, in our history, but the extent of the devastation and the human cases is unbelievable this time. And as you referred, before that, we had a financial meltdown that started like 8 months ago. 6 months or 5 months ago started COVID-19. So this is layer number 3 of the difficult circumstances that we have to manage and face. You are never prepared to such tragedies and you are never ready for them. But as you said, in Lebanon, we know how to overcome difficulties because we expect a very volatile world. We expect changes overnight, dramatic changes in the environment and everything. At this stage, it's very difficult to predict what's going to happen and how we're going to face it. But definitely, we thought from a very early stage of Massaya that we need to have emergency plans or backup plans or alternatives. So now we are reactivating all these alternatives that we have prepared for the time of crisis. But of course, given the extent of the damages, the human casualties, the injuries, the dead people, it's difficult right now, but we will overcome it. It will take time to adapt. It's all about adapting to the new circumstances. That's it. So we are in adaptation phase.
You talked briefly then about when you are Lebanese, you learn to live with such circumstances and learn to react. How has, if you could just elaborate upon that, how has your experiences during the Civil War, when you had to pack your bags very, very quickly and run away from the family estate that is now the winery, and during the 2006 war, when you stayed with your vines during the entire conflict, and when the area around the winery was being bombarded and shrapnel was falling into the vineyards, how has that shaped you personally in your ability to react, and what happened last week and in the last 9 months that awoke these instincts in you?
Well, by nature, when you grow up in Lebanon, you have to prepare contingency plans. There are always contingency plans for everything. And the day this explosion happened, I was in the same vineyard. My sister called me and told me about the blast of Beirut. In the past, when we were young and we were living here, of course, Saint-Émilion was a part of our childhood, and in dire circumstances because of the war and because of the threat on our lives. So we learned from an early age that nothing is final, nothing is set, and you have to be ready for the unthinkable that might happen overnight. And this is the philosophy of people who lived and grew in Lebanon, that unthinkable might happen tomorrow morning, and we have to face it. We have to put our acts together. We have to focus mainly on our family, on our friends, on our support, to be able to face the changes and the dramatic sometimes modification you have, and the impact on a normal life. So how do we adapt? I don't know. I don't think there is a rule, or there is a different approach. The only thing about it is never to give up, always finding the opportunities, and always be aware of contingency plans to face new realities, because the modification happen very fast and sometimes unexpected. And the way of living in Lebanon, that's why we have a very strong connection in terms of families, in terms of friends. We know how to enjoy life because we went through so many circumstances that we learned that you need your family to be able to bounce back and to look forward and to carry on. And everything is on the table. There are no topics that are put on the side. Traveling is a possibility. Moving is a possibility. As you said, Massaya has 2 operations. It's not by chance that we have one on Mount Lebanon and one in the Bekaa, because we feel that sometimes we have to focus on Mount Lebanon, sometimes we have to focus on the Bekaa, our operations. And that's why Massaya, as you know, has also connections, foreign investors that are the Brunier family from Le Vieux Télégraphe and Dominique Hébrard from Bordeaux, that also count like family for us after 20 years of collaboration. And they also know how to support us, how to help us, and how to think together to overcome the difficulties. Okay. So it's a state of mind, Michael, I would say, rather than a process or a procedure. It's a state of mind. Being Lebanese is not a citizenship. Being Lebanese, being from Lebanon, is a responsibility. And you are born with that. You live that, you breathe that, and every day you feel the weight of this responsibility on your shoulders.
Well, that's very inspiring. I wonder if they could package it and teach it in an MBA course. I think you know the spirit of what it means to be Lebanese and the level of affection for the rest of the world towards the country and its people has been evident in the outpouring of support that I've noticed here in the UK. What has been the reaction from, and this could be aimed at Sami if he's still here, or you, what's been the reaction from your distributors and customers abroad? How have they responded to this tragedy?
Michael, hi, I'm still here.
Hi, Sami.
How are you? Yes. Thank you for hosting us, Michael. You've been vocal about wine and Lebanon, and we really are thankful for that. Let me just raise my small glass of arak for one of the. We received emails by the hundreds, not by the tens, by the hundreds, about the tragedy that occurred. You enumerated a few situations. 2006, Anthony Bourdain, bless his soul, was coming to see us the day the 2006 bombing happened. We were at the Ta'nail property, Ramzi and I, and the first bomb landed on the Beirut-Damascus road, blew up the road, and we looked at together at this, and we knew something was gonna go bad. And it wasn't till 4 years later that he came back. Today you have Jose Andres in the street of Jemaizi. He said to me yesterday, man, why didn't you bring me here before? Why didn't I have the guts to come visit Lebanon before? Same with Anthony Bourdain when we spoke, in the months after his visiting, and he said that's the most fascinating place I've visited. I would like to raise a glass for one boy from the village here in his early 20s that got over his way here. He came here at 9 p.m. in the evening because we were preparing our sunset bar at Massaya here on Mount Lebanon. Rushed here to come help us. The next day he was working at the harbor in the silos. He disappeared for 3 days. His name is Tony Ai. And he passed away, and I saw his mom at the funerals, and she said to me, come sit by me, and she told me Massaya was in Tony's heart. Countless Tonys that struggle like this for Lebanon. And the epitaph of this country, I think, we got emails. I have 2 friends, one in the US, in DC. She emailed us and said, I'm just fundraising and I'm coming to help. From the UK, we got the same. And you mentioned our distributors. Ramzi spoke about our partners, the family, the Brunier, but also our Massaya distributors across the world, from Canada, from Quebec, from Washington States, from New York, from Florida, from the Midwest in the US, all over, from the UK certainly, and they were the first to make fundraisers, and it's unreal. But this country or this city kind of, for people, I don't know why, but echoes, despite the tragedies, the news that we grew up with and all of that, represents the heart, the beating heart of the world. I have never witnessed such a wave of support. It's unbelievable. Even I'm sure the French president Macron, who came and walked the streets here, would not have had the same support he has had in Lebanon. And beyond that, Michael, you gentlemen and our audience, I think most of you are not here, but if you see Michael, the devastation in Jemaizi and Marmkhail, it's beyond belief. What the cameras are showing is not nothing. But when you sense this youth in the street, helping, coming together, cleaning, bringing supplies, supporting each other, it's unreal. This is what gives you hope about it all. I don't want to compare, but you have a small riot or things like elsewhere. You have people looting and all. Despite the economical crisis, despite everything, the generosity of people is unbelievable. And this is what I think gives this special flavor to all of the give us the will and not the courage, but the real resistance is us at the end of the day. As Ramzi was saying to you, every day is another challenge. Now he's in the vineyards. Actually, he started the harvest. Tomorrow, my son is 10. He's talking with his uncle on how to start here tomorrow. And Ramzi has a chap from Brazil coming this evening that's going to help him in Mount Lebanon doing the wine. And my son is 10, already putting his hands into the juice. So this is a bit our everyday. And the real encouragement or the real power of resistance comes from you guys. You I see on the screens, you that support the wine and the life about Lebanon. And this is where the power comes from, because the world is becoming a village. Everyone has felt affected by what happened in Beirut, everyone.
It's very eloquently put, Sami. if as you say, we can draw some kind of optimism from this awful tragedy. And I don't want to descend into politics during this debate, but do you think that in the future some good will come out of this, and that the Lebanese will be able to realize their true potential as some of the most dynamic and innovative people in the world? I mean, ideally, how would you like the victims of last week's explosion to be honored by the country moving forward? What would you like to see, Sami?
There is a French saying, Michael, l'espoir fait vivre. Hope makes you live. If there wasn't a hope, I think no one would be left here. So hope, yes, there is. We've hit bottom with the tragedy. Possibly there might be, and we're not going to fall into politics, there might be more tragedies at the door. But I can tell you one thing, is that the alignment of world leaders about what's happening is hopefully a possibility, because Lebanon now is hostage of the geopolitics. Let's not kid each other, and I'm not going to go into the title of the movie you're featuring is, or the documentary is, Wine and War, and I saw the trail where you say those guys are making wine in civil war. How can they do that? And it's ongoing, because even the civil war wasn't the civil war. But what gives you the power is the weather we have here, is the people, like I told you, it's the climate. Ramzi's harvesting today. His worries are not about rainfall, if he can harvest tomorrow, or about disease he has to spray. His wines are going to be organic. His grapes are ripening beautifully. The sun is, here we have, you've been to the winery here on Mount Lebanon, Michael. Every single person that has visited Massaya from overseas not only left us a message, but is asking on when to come back. As I told you, Jose Andres said, why in the world you didn't bring me here earlier? And it wasn't us who brought him, but he was saying it like this. This place is very special, and obvious. I think it bears a huge weight in this part of the world. So to talk about optimism now lightly would be almost lying to each other. I think we're at the beginning of the tunnel, but the aperitif was quite explosive. I hope that the digestif will be less dramatic, and we end up freeing ourselves from those 40 years of hostage taken. It reminds me of the hostages in the Tehran embassy in 1977 or 78. I think we're still there here.
Ramzi, if I could segue briefly from war into wine. I don't know if you remember in 2014 when we interviewed you at Massaya, you said that one of the things you learned, one of the things you took away with you from the 2006 experience was that life is to be lived for the moment, and that you translated that nugget of philosophy into your wines, and you said it inspired you to make wines to be drunk now, because life is for living now.
How
is that?
Go ahead. Sorry, Michael, but it is a little bit the philosophy of Lebanon. You have to enjoy every day, because every day counts. You don't know what the next day will bring you. And this is the philosophy of our nightlife, of our socializing, of our friendship, extreme relationship. And this is Lebanon. It's always about going from one extreme to another. And in our daily life, we have to be on this extreme of enjoying it, because you don't know what tomorrow will bring you. But at the same time, you have to be aware of something, in my opinion, that is important. When you face such tragedies like the one we had last week, you have to put things in perspective. You have to go back to your roots, and this will give you the strength to carry on and to look forward. My grandmother used to tell us about the starvation of people during World War, the First World War, and our past could go all the way to 3,000, 4,000 years if you're talking about wines, and this is very inspiring. You know, after this blast, after all this, I was thinking about this temple of Bacchus in Baalbek, and about the weight of history and the legacy that our ancestors brought to this country and taught us and included in our DNA. This is the message that we have to carry on. You know it, and many of your audience know it. Lebanon is at a turning point. Either we can continue with our culture, the culture of enjoying life, enjoying food, enjoying friendship, and enjoying wine, because it's part of our culture, or Lebanon might take another turn and go a little bit more in accordance, or more in with the local situation.
Ramzi, ton micro, il fait du bruit.
So now we're going through this turning point, and what gives us hope is our family, the circles of friendship, but also our roots. You know, I told you once before, Michael, and I will say it to your audience again, what you produce is not wine. What you will produce is a message that comes from Lebanon, that celebrates our way of living, that celebrates human beings, happiness, friendship, coexistence, solidarity, and tolerance. This is what wine is about.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's very true. The point I was trying to make was more of a wine style point, is that while the Lebanese do, as you say, live for the day, and it's very true, our nightlife, our whole way of living, our whole DNA is shaped by living for the moment, because we don't know what tomorrow will bring. There has been a movement within the wine industry that is kind of very top down in the way that many wineries look at their wines, and they place a lot of emphasis on wines that really you know, need a bit of time before they're drunk. But you were the first person I spoke to, and it makes perfect sense now, as it did at the time, that actually said one of the ways that we can make wine that reflects who we are is to make wine for drinking now. And I was going to ask you how that philosophy has evolved since you first told me in 2014 in the wines that you're making at the moment. I mean, yeah. How does that philosophy stand within your portfolio now?
We still have the Massaya that we want to release as quickly as possible. We still have the Massaya that we want to enjoy for spring. Now we are in summer. By the end of fall, hopefully the wine will be prepared, and then we will have to release the first bottles in the spring and to enjoy them. And this is the cycle of life, as you know. We have the rosé for spring, and then we have the whites, then we have the reds for winter, and we have the arak, as you know. So there is a life cycle in Lebanon where you match the wines, what you drink, with what you eat, and with the seasons. And this is very specific of our country. You know it to a certain extent, and it is still there. For Massaya, we produce wines to enjoy. The vin plaisir, we would say in French. It means wines to enjoy right now, not for contests.
Right.
This is the reality.
And to tell me, you were the first of the new generation of producers that really recognized the potential of white wines in Lebanon, and I think part of the philosophy behind opening the Fa'ra winery was to dedicate that to the making of the white wines. You were the first of the new producers to really see the potential in Abedi, to understand that this is a grape that can really deliver a deeply profound expression of terroir. What has been your experience with white wine in the last 10 years, and what have you done? What have you tweaked? What have you learnt about how white grapes react in the Bekaa at high altitudes? And what do you know now that you didn't know then?
Well, as you know, Michael, we built a winery dedicated for white wine. For this experience of Abedi grapes and other cigars that we use, we learned a lot of things. First of all, we learned and we confirmed that the Bekaa is an excellent terroir for rosé, for reds, but for the whites we have to go on a certain altitude in terms of vineyards. What we learned also is the techniques that are used abroad or that are very common abroad might not work for Lebanon, and we have to do it differently. We learned a lot of things about the grapes and the aging. I mean the aging on lees. It means 3-4 months after the harvest, how to keep them, how to store them, and how to work on the texture of the wine rather than working on the aromatics. So for this purpose, we built a winery dedicated with a full team, and as Sami was saying, we have a dedicated team almost at Fa'ra right now, and this is new and this is developing, just to perfect a little bit our approach of the white wines. There are many things that we changed at Massaya. For instance, we have now what we call the single vineyards that we didn't have back in 2012. Instead of having vineyards, grapes from different vineyards, we try to express the terroir of an area, of a region. And even in white, what we're trying to do, we're trying to have a label with one monocepage, one single vineyard, not in terms of monocepage, not in terms of grape variety, but in terms of single location, because each location has its soul, and we try to translate the soul in the wines. So this is the new dimension that Massaya is gearing towards. The single vineyard, it is very important to us. And as you know, most of our vineyards are in extreme conditions. Look at this one. I mean, here I can tell you, it's windy every day. It's very dry, very harsh, and it is not a regular vineyard where vines grow easily. It is really a vineyard that requires the vine to stretch its roots and to go very deep in the soil to be able to survive.
Okay. I'd like to throw throw this open to the floor now. If anyone has any questions for either Ramzi or Sami. I think Norbert had a question earlier.
Yeah, Ramzi or Sami, I'm just going back to the whole thing with the conflict, and every time there is war or there's tragedy in Lebanon, and I know it because I witness you guys. You always come up with another way, and you mentioned it, that you have to adapt all the time. With this current crisis, how are you and other vineyards going to? I mean, it's very important to get your wine out of the country, because in the country you're not making there is no revenue, there is no restaurant, so it's very important for you to get your money out. I mean, your bottles out. How have you adapted? What's going to happen on logistically? Is Tripoli equipped to handle the amount of? I guess, is it equipped to handle the exports of Lebanon?
Very good question, Robert. Norbert, firstly, we want you and the audience and your likes drinking more Lebanese wines. That helps a lot, because when you have demand, there is always a way. Tripoli is a bit clogged now indeed. And I was surprised to see, because not only the harbor itself, but it's the people that lost their offices, their data. Imagine, most of those logistics providers had their offices by the harbor in Beirut. And luckily, I mean, it happened at 6:06. Actually, I was a call with our distributors on the East Coast in New York. 6:06, 10 minutes after 6, because it took 2-3 few minutes apart, because we had more than one explosion. But the offices are totally wiped out. The buildings flattened, and others totally just emptied by the explosion. So imagine the adaptation and time of adaptation. Tripoli will take summer. We have 2 shipments that were on their way. They were deflected towards Tripoli, but it doesn't have the capacity to replace the port of Beirut, obviously. But the good news I saw yesterday over an email, because we have some shipments going to France and the UK, and the person handling the logistics at the office said a side of the port of Beirut might open very rapidly, and they're working on it, and we will able to ship from there. So you were talking about the resilience. I mean, it's the adaptation of those Phoenicians we are. I'm sure in the past, in their boats, they were gonna conquer Rome, and one ship was lost or was hijacked by the Romans, and they discovered how those were designed, because the Carthaginians used to beat the hell out of the Romans every time at sea. And so we're adapting. You see, I was really pleased. It was like, imagine how suffocating it is when your main door to the world, our eastern border, northeast, is beloved by Syria. At best, at the border, you end up between ISIS hands or their cronies. On the south, we're blocked with the border with Israel. So our oxygen and our Our breathing space is the sea. And you hear that you are your main port, your main harbor to the world is no longer there. But just the idea of this is claustrophobic. And when I saw that email yesterday, when I asked, you know, what is happening with our container actually of Massaya Arak that's going to France, are you shipping it from Tripoli? He said, sir, I think within a few days there will be a line route out from the port of Beirut. So despite this atomic bomb that took place, because it wasn't an explosion, it was much bigger than this, they are already lining out a route at sea. So this is the incredible adaptation of those Lebanese. I don't know. Trust me, I don't know how they're doing it, and they will. So hopefully we will be able to ship out. In terms of Massaya per se, I mean, I talk about all our colleagues. You know, when you said earlier, Wines of Lebanon, we're a small country, but Massaya has French partners. We have very reliable partners, distributing partners in the US. They usually pull full containers, knowing that transit time can be long and knowing that there might be hurdles along the way. And it's quite an unusual place to ship, to take wines from. So they tend to keep some buffer stocks. So hopefully, and also our partners in the UK, we have very, very long-standing, solid relationships, reputable wines, I like to think, because those relations have only developed all the way from the west coast of the US to the Emirates. And when the vintage is out, we give them our opinion on the vintage, and they trust us, and they ship on containers. So in that way, we're quite resilient indeed, Michael. I don't know if this has answered Norbert.
I think so, yes.
It's very good. It's excellent, Sami. Beautiful. Well done.
Mm-hmm. Maybe I have a question too. Good morning for some of you. Good afternoon for the others. A question for Sami. If I understood it correctly, you were mentioning the fact that you've been working not so on what you refer to as the aromas of the wine, but on the texture of the wines. So more on the texture. Did I understand it correctly or not?
I think
Ramzi
must have spoken about
Ramzi,
the aromas. No,
yes.
no worries. Ramzi?
Okay. Yes.
Ramzi,
yes,
sorry,
exactly.
I'm sorry.
Yeah. We
And I'm sorry, I'll continue. So that intrigues me, of course. I have two questions. Can you elaborate a little bit on how you work? And secondly, which wines should I purchase to taste the difference?
The texture of the white wine I was referring to comes mainly from two factors. One, the élevage en lise that we do after the end of the fermentation, and secondly, we use oak, but not new oak. Predominantly, it is a oak that has been used before. So the wood in the white wine gives a special touch and influence on the texture of the wines.
Okay.
And this is out of our experience. I'm not talking about the flavoring of vanilla or the new oak. I am talking about oak that has been around for 3 or 4 wines and that will give an extra length wines. If you want to compare it, just ideally it would be to compare a bottle of Massaya Blanc 2018 or 17 with one before 2013, so the previous vintages, because this took a long time for us to develop this texture approach on the white wines. So this is for whites. For rosé, we ferment all our rosé in concrete vats, also for the texture. So this answers a little bit your
of course, it does
your question,
completely.
I think.
Yeah, completely. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
I'll ask. Michael, if you don't mind. Hi. Hi, Sami. Hi, Ramzi. It's Jamal.
Hi, Jamal. Nice
Nice
seeing you.
Nice to see you.
Hi, Jamal.
Hi, Sami. So with regard to texture, since are you doing experiments also with on any of the wines in fermenting in amphora or anything? You have such beautiful amphorae and for the arak. I'm wondering if you're doing anything with wine in that.
Very good question, Jamal. Actually, we have the amphoras ready. We never we had them ready for 3 vintages, and we are experimenting few things on them, but I cannot release anything, discuss anything, because we don't have enough track record. And we're using the same amphoras we had for arak, so they're not especially fit for wine making, but we are a little bit experimenting here and there every year a little bit, but it is a too early stage to discuss it seriously. So we are still amateurs in this field. I don't know if it will lead to something convincing, to be honest with you. I don't know yet, but we like the idea, and so far nothing was quite conclusive or nothing that is worth being mentioned or developed at this stage.
Can I follow now? Also, with regard to with arak, of course, your arak was perhaps one of the most dramatic araks released into the market when you released it in the blue bottle, and of course, the quality is exemplary and all the rest. Are you planning on any other sort of arak? I mean, there've been some producers who have produced a reserve level or something, or are you just going to stick with the success of your wonderful arak as it is?
We're let me take on that. You know, when I started making arak in 1995, actually 93, 94, and 95 was the first year we hit the market. I got a call from someone that liked our arak. I don't know, someone introduced me to someone. I got a call from a gentleman saying, you know, Jamal, Phoenician has 2 sides to it. It's good to be Phoenician and Lebanese in resilience, but also they can be a bit tricky. And he says, sir, I know you're making arak, and can you sell me some of the ones you make specially for you for the home? So that's typical in the mentality. I said, I'm out in daily eating and drinking, sir. Trust me, I drink the bottle I get on the shelf or from at all restaurants. So to phrase it in another word, Jamal, making Massaya Arak every batch, every year, we give it our heart. When you have a small difference in the Araks we make, it's related to the anise, because we use organic green anise, the best you get. And we have a little vintage variation with arak, but we only have one arak, and all what we produce is bottled. We keep a bit just to mix the following season. So we're not, since the beginning, we faced a lot this idea of 5 years and grapes and not grapes. All we do is totally authentic. And actually, like Michael said in the introduction, this blue bottle out here put the arak back on the map, because before Massaya, everyone, you know, looked at us like, they said to me, why are you making arak? You're not even from Zahle at the beginning, they said. And then when we made the arak, it became the renaissance and the arak of reference in the market. So we're doing the same arak we've started doing in 1995. if that answers. With a shot every year, like Ramzi says for the wine, you know, he's the winemaker, and every year he gives it his best shot, and that's what he's making with the distilling the arak.
And the supplies of anise from I guess still from Jebel Sheikh, I guess, is the still you're sourcing from there, right?
Yes, on donkey bags, you name it. But we get it from there, yeah, from Hina. Yes, okay. It's Mount Hermon between Lebanon, Syria, and Israel.
Yeah,
Jebel Sheikh. Yeah.
Thank you.
Voila. Was that answer?
Anyone else?
Yeah, you got it. Thank you.
Okay, guys.
In the absence of any other questions, I'd just like to thank Ramzi and Sami for taking the time to join us today, especially, as I said earlier, with this very present cloud of sadness hanging over us. Thank you, guys. It was a really, really interesting talk. You both were extremely eloquent and very both and clear in your answers. And I think that your words and the eloquence of what you said were most fitting given what's happened